I'm Alex Michaelson. This week, the issue is Trump triumphs. The Republican nominee sweeps all 7 battleground states and even gains ground in California. How did he do it? Plus, why did Kamala Harris lose? And how can Democrats regroup? And the issue is special session. Governor Gavin Newsom begins his fight with the Trump administration before they even take office. With us for insights and analysis, Democratic Congressmember Katie Porter and Peter Hamby of Puck News and Snapchat. We saw a lot of this coming, as did John Kobylt of KFI Radio. All of them in studio for a special post-election edition of The Issue Is, which starts right now.
Broadcasting across California, you're watching The Issue Is.
Frankly, this was, I believe, the greatest political movement of all time.
Trump dominates and Kamala Harris loses ground, and the country will be feeling the impact of this week for decades to come. Welcome to The Issue Is. I'm Alex Michaelson. We got a lot to unpack, so we brought in some of the big guns this week. On our panel for the first time is Democratic Congresswoman Katie Porter, who represents Orange County in the House for the next few months. She ran for Senate earlier this year, and she has gone viral for years explaining complicated concepts with her famous whiteboard. I don't think she brought the whiteboard today, but we still will get into the complicated concepts. Also with us this week is Peter Hamby, who is the host of Puck's Powers That Be podcast, and he also is the host of Good Luck America on Snapchat, where he recently traveled the country talking to young voters. Great to have both of you here. Thanks for being here. Congresswoman, let's start with you. What happened? Why did Trump win?
While Trump won the presidency, Democrats actually fared pretty well in a lot of ways this election cycle. We won in a lot of states that Trump won, right? North Carolina, Wisconsin, where we got majorities in the legislature. And the House, I think, is still potentially on a path to Democratic control. So I don't think this is a mandate. I think that Democrats need to continue to fight for the American people, to fight for the issues that matter most to people. And I think in this next immediate aftermath, we need to avoid the blame and instead talk about and be responsive to our constituents. So on election night, I went to pick up my daughter from water polo practice, and she's 12, and she got in the car and she was crying. And I said, did someone punch you? Like, water polo is a rough sport. I was like, did someone hit you? Did the coach yell at you? What happened? And she said, Mom, Trump won. Trump's gonna win. And what if I get raped and I need to have an abortion? This is from a 12-year-old, my 12-year-old daughter. And so it was really a reminder of how scary this time is for people and how important it is for Democrats to have strategies, both at the state level and the federal level, to make sure that we can continue to protect people's rights.
But let me push back a second on the concept that this wasn't sort of a mandate. I mean, he won every single swing state, and he gained in almost every single county in the country, gaining in California.
Well, I think
Orange County.
Yeah, I mean, I think gaining is really different than saying, like, everybody agrees, which is how I think about a mandate.
Okay.
So
I mean, it's not 1980. It's not 1984.
That's right.
Right.
So, look, I think it's important for us to think about what were the issues and what were the voters that moved toward him. Clearly, Americans feel anxious about economic opportunity. They feel anxious about where our economy is in the world. Younger voters in particular, I think, worry about, are they going to be able to afford housing? Are they going to be able to afford to start an economy? What will AI mean for those jobs? And I do think Vice President Harris had a good message on those things, but Trump ran a very chaotic, noisy campaign, and I think to the extent it was just hard for that message to penetrate.
And Peter, you spent a lot of time talking to young voters all around the country, and last week on our show, you talked about what they said to you. How do you read what happened?
I heard the grocery thing, the gas thing, the prices thing over and over again, even from young women of color who were going to vote for Kamala Harris, but they were worried about it. And so, you know, hindsight's 2020, but looking back on those interviews, there were all some clues in there. I think big picture, I think Kamala Harris probably ran the best campaign she could under incredibly rare, unprecedented circumstances. The drag of Joe Biden being very unpopular was clear. Also, you know, smarter people than I have stepped back. Pretty much every incumbent government in the entire world has been wiped out in the post-COVID world.
And the truth on the inflation issue is that America has actually done better than most of the rest of the world. But that is a tough message for people to understand. I mean, you're not comparing your prices to what somebody's paying in the UK. Right. You're comparing your prices to what you paid a year ago.
You're also not looking at, like, data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics when you go to the gas station.
No,
or the grocery
you're
store.
standing in front of the two boxes of cereal, and you're saying, "I am not." Like I've told my son, Paul, we are not buying $7 Apple Jacks. Like, they're just not that good. Like, we're not putting those in the cart. Like, go find some generic cereal, the generic Cheerios, and put them in. And so I think people experience that in a very personal way. And I think for Democrats, it's not that they have strong economic policy. I have grave concerns about, as does every economist in the world, about what Donald Trump's proposed policies will mean for our economy. But I think Democrats' struggle is, how do you connect those policies to those very concrete moments in people's lives, like standing at the grocery store.
And there's a strong argument that tariffs is going to make everything more expensive, but the Democrats were not able to effectively communicate that message.
Joe Biden has never been the world's greatest communicator, but he hasn't communicated what he did for the economy. Bernie Sanders put out a statement the other day saying the Democratic Party forgot about the middle class.
Let's put that up on the screen right now. It should come as no great surprise that a Democratic Party which has abandoned working class people would find that the working class has abandoned them.
So, look, Joe Biden was the first president to walk a picket line. When I was traveling through Michigan and Pennsylvania a couple weeks ago, like, you would see signs from, the Infrastructure Act, like, this highway brought to you by, he did the Donald Trump thing. Joe Biden, he signed his name on these billboards that were all over the place, but people didn't understand that. There's also the question of culture. When Bernie Sanders is talking about the working class, like the Democratic Party used to be the party of workers, and the Republican Party was the party of management. Country club. It's kind of been flipped on its head a little bit. And Trump has astutely used culture as a way in with white working class voters, but also non-white working class voters. And we obviously saw that in exit polls, which are flawed and will be revised, and we'll see. But it's very clear that within that, at least, like, Latinos decisively moved in Trump's direction.
The idea that Donald Trump is some kind of actually has experience with what it's like to be a working American is laughable. And so I think Democrats do need to think about, what are we doing with our policies, the establishment or the status quo that is holding back candidates who have that ability to connect. And I think that's a legitimate thing for us to be asking ourselves.
It is amazing if you think about it. Donald Trump, who lives in literally a golden tower in a country club and flies around on a private jet, has this ability to connect with working class people and make them feel heard by him. One of the big questions going forward is there going to be a Democratic House or not? This week, I spoke with Pete Aguilar, who's the chair of the House Democrats. He's the congressman from the Inland Empire. Here's some of what he said about what's ahead. Based off of what you're seeing, and you know this stuff better than just about anyone, are you tracking right now like a 1 or 2 seat difference? What do you think it's going to ultimately come down to?
The weather forecast is tight. That's what it is. Look, we're not in a position to say what the majority will be, but we are in a position to say the majority is not certain.
Congresswoman, I know there were a lot of people that were wishing that you were returning to Congress. Your district itself, Dave Min running to replace you. You feel good about that one?
I do. I think Democrat Dave Min is going to win the race over Republican Scott Baugh, who I beat last time. And look, I know this better than anyone. I spent 9 days in 2018 losing before I was winning, and then went on to serve in Congress. Even in last election cycle 2022, it took me 6 days to have the race called. This is part of how California voting works. And so I think we're going to see in the next day or two, tonight, tomorrow, and into next week, I think we will pick up a few more seats in California, and that will bring us very, very close to a Democratic majority. I don't know if we get there. As I agree with Congressman Aguilar, the weather forecast is tight.
Yeah, and a lot of people watching this are going to be like, why does it take so much longer in California than Florida? Florida gets it. And really, it is a feature, not a bug. Can you explain why California has made this decision to do it this way? Because it is a decision.
Yep. It's not just California. It's actually most of the West Coast, so Washington, Oregon, Arizona increasingly. We have decided that we want to give people the entirety of Election Day to cast their ballot and to be able to cast their ballot on Election Day in the way that works best for them, which means we can't count the ballots at 8 o'clock because they're still being poked into the drop box at 7:59.
So we're allowing for people to mail in ballots, which have to come in. We're doing signature verification on all the mail-in ballots, which takes time. If there's an error on the signature verification, we give people time to fix it so that they make sure that their ballot is counted, which is why it takes a lot longer. And we have seen voter participation go way up because of this. In 2020, we were at over 70% voter registration, or voter participation, which was the highest that we saw since 1952.
I really like this proud Californian vibe coming from you.
I am a proud Californian.
Me too.
Yeah, we know.
I'm also proud to have met this guy. We are honoring this week Quincy Jones, one of the great musicians of all time, and taking a look at his musical legacy throughout this week's show. So we're going to break with a song that he wrote, which became a theme to one of my favorite movies of all time, Austin Powers. Soul Bossa Nova is a Quincy Jones joint. Take a look.
Groovy, baby.
Groovy. Governor Gavin Newsom in Ventura County this week, meeting with rescue crews at the mountain fire on the same day that he called for a special session to preemptively set aside money to fight the Trump administration. I talked with Jesse Gabriel, the chair of the Budget Committee, about that.
Hopefully we will not be in a position where we don't have to file a lot of these lawsuits. This is to be ready in the case that they break the law, that they violate the U.S. Constitution, that they are doing things that are unlawful or unconstitutional, and we're not going to get caught flat-footed.
Let's talk more with our panel right now, Katie Porter and Peter Hamby. Peter, there are some people that see what the governor is doing as just a step to running for president, and that it's a stunt and that it's unnecessary. What say you?
Let's acknowledge we do live in a country where we have red states and blue states. And leadership in California very much has the right to huddle after what is likely to be a very ahistorical, unprecedented second Trump term and figure out what can we do for our people here in California. So I think Governor Newsom's absolutely making the right move for his party and, you know, his state.
I know you've publicly agreed with that.
I absolutely agree with that. And I think, look, there are a lot of people who Trump made clear are going to be kind of in his line of sight. Both people who maybe are, are DACA students, people who are worried about abortion, people who are trans. Like, there are a lot of people who are having a lot of anxiety. It's not just I disagree. It's actually, we had a presidential candidate who said, I'm going to come and I'm going to go get them. I'm going to go harm them. I'm going to go take away things from them. And so I think it's absolutely appropriate.
There, of course, are a lot of people that are wondering if you are going to run for governor. So what are you thinking?
I am still thinking, I think is the answer. So I feel a little bit like I think Kamala does. Like, I care about these issues, and particularly these economic issues. The cost of housing was the sort of marquee thing in my Senate campaign, the thing I talked the most about. I'm so glad to see Democrats finally beginning to engage on what has been a big problem. And so I don't know exactly what that's going to look like. I'm going back to law teaching in the spring. I'm looking forward to whiteboarding some law students in the meantime, and then we'll see where it goes from there. But look, California has challenges. We also have so many opportunities.
And Peter, are you running for governor?
I just know I do not want to take your law school class. That would scare the F out of me.
No, it's my bark is worse than my bite.
Okay. Well, it is great to see you both. Thank you for your insight. John Kobylt is with us next, and he's got a different take on the governor and some of that. But we're going to end with more music and our tribute to Quincy Jones. And to me, this is the song that's probably most identifiable with him, which is Michael Jackson's Billie Jean. And we're going to look at the performance from Motown 25, Michael Jackson's first moonwalk, one of the great moments in the history of entertainment. Thank you both. MJ, take it away. This is a look at the issue is from 4 years ago exactly, the week Joe Biden defeated Donald Trump to win the presidency. With us, you see Carla Marinucci, Brian Goldsmith, and KFI's John Kobylt. Listen to what John predicted.
May have signed up now for 8 years of Trump because he's probably going to run again. And his campaign will start in 2 years. He'll agitate from now until 2022. Then he starts a campaign. And then if he wins, he'll be around until 2028. So instead of getting it over with quickly in 4 years, now there might be 8 more years of Trump in the media every day.
Well, you got it exactly right. So much so, we wanted to bring you back to gloat.
I am Nostradamus.
Yeah.
I will tell you your future.
Yeah. So, I mean, how did this happen? I guess you saw it all. You saw it all coming.
Well, what I said that night, because I was looking at a longer version of the clip, is he had 70 million votes, which was the highest in history next to Joe Biden. Same election. 70 million votes. Nobody's going to quit that game. I mean, plus, he'd already started talking about that he got screwed in the count. So it was, I said he's going to agitate for 2 years. Boy, did he agitate. I mean, that was before Insurrection Day.
Right.
So he's not, and the thing about him is, I compare him to probably what color television must have been like. When people saw color TV, you couldn't go back to black and white. When people heard the Beatles, you couldn't go back to listening to Bobby Rydell. You had somebody who is so different and so explosive, it makes all the other politicians look washed out and faded. And it's hard to go back and look at somebody, let's say Ron DeSantis, who ordinarily would be, a strong candidate.
Probably would have been the nominee.
But up against Donald Trump, he disappears into the wall. It's like wallpaper. And that's the problem. As long as he's on stage, he's very difficult to beat.
How do you think he did it? I mean, why do you think he won?
I saw two numbers. I saw a CNN poll, 75% of the public said my financial situation is worse. I saw a CBS poll where 62% of the country wants mass deportations immediately. That's mostly what he talked about. And all the rest was just noise that I don't think most of the public paid attention to.
You interviewed Trump not that long ago. Here's a clip of how he described that interview.
You know what this is for me? Therapy.
Okay.
I'm speaking to a smart man. This is like some people go to a psychiatrist. I don't have time. So this is like my therapy.
What, after talking to him, experiencing him, how did that sort of change your view of him?
Talking to him made me realize one of his gifts is he really can connect with people easily. When he gets comfortable, I remember that the first line or two, he was a little tentative. And when he realized I wasn't going to turn this into a mud wrestling match, which many interviewers do, he started relaxing and being Donald Trump the entertainer, Donald Trump the guy at the bar. And that's why I enjoyed the interview. It showed another side of him. There were plenty of people who were doing the combative journalism, which needs to be done. But, that space was pretty crowded. So I went to another space and said, okay, he's relaxed, he's being funny, and people should know that too. And because that's a huge part of his appeal.
The Democrats clearly have a messaging problem around the country. Where do they go from here?
They got to get off all the woke stuff. They've got to retire all the weird phrases. Nobody wants to hear about Latinx. Nobody wants to hear about criminal justice reform, defund the police. I mean, just the whole mess of the last 4 years. All the scolding. The scolding has to stop. The lecturing has to stop. People really hate this. I mean, they just don't want to deal with it. And I can tell you, the mail vote has been talked a lot about. Most guys really can't stand this.
What do you make of where Governor Newsom goes from here? Because he, this week, saying he's going to be doing a special session, bringing the legislature back to try to fund lawsuits potentially against Donald Trump. What do you make of that?
Boy, he's trapped in 2022. I mean, he really is. That's not the mood of the country. That's not the mood of California. That totally misreads what's going on here. People, all the stuff, we've got all that homeless, we've got all the crime, we've got the highest taxes, gas prices already almost at $5, and he's going to jack it up more, and he wants to sue Trump over what? When? Hey, Trump's not even president yet. He hasn't done anything yet.
All right, John, we're going to end with music. This week we're paying tribute to Quincy Jones. What a life well lived. I got to know him a little bit, and I asked him what was the coolest moment of your career. And he said to me that he cut this song with Frank Sinatra called Fly Me to the Moon.
I love that song.
And then Neil Armstrong flew to the moon, and the first song they ever played on the moon was this song.
Oh,
and so he thought, that was pretty cool.
All right, play that.
So in honor of Quincy Jones, here's a little Fly Me to the Moon. Thanks, John.
Fly me to the moon, let me play among the stars.
We end with my thoughts. Donald Trump pulled off the biggest political comeback in American history. On January 7th, 2021, he looked like he was headed for political exile, potentially behind bars. Now, he enters the White House with a Supreme Court that's already offered him wide-scale immunity and a Republican Senate ready to confirm all of his people. What does he do with that? Well, that's still very much an open question. How did he do it? By taking advantage of a trend that toppled leaders all over the world, inflation. 2/3 of the country thought our country was headed in the wrong direction because many of those voters struggled to pay for their groceries. When Kamala Harris was asked how'd she be different from Joe Biden, she didn't have an answer. Like James Carville said in 1992, it is still the economy, stupid. Both Harris and Biden, though, deserve credit for doing something that Trump refused to do 4 years ago. Concede quickly, with class and grace. Our country cannot function without free and fair elections and a peaceful transfer of power. Going forward, we all need to find a better way to talk with each other as Americans, even if we disagree. Echo chambers are bad for everyone. It's part of the central premise of this show and something we are committed to doing going forward. In that spirit, we end with music, our final song this week highlighting Quincy Jones' career. We Are the World brought together singers from different generations, styles, and political ideologies in unified purpose. Hopefully, as we all take a deep breath after this election, we can find a similar purpose in the years ahead. I'm Elex Michaelson. See you next week.